Across history, some of the most formidable adversaries faced by ancient armies were not rival soldiers, but the raw power of nature itself. Imagine being a soldier in the world's greatest army. You're trained, you're armored, you're disciplined. But what happens when your enemy isn't human? What happens when the battlefield itself rises up against you? Imagine an army, not just facing spears and shields, but an unseen enemy far more brutal. A blizzard that blinds and freezes the soul, a desert that devours you whole, or a flood that erases entire legions from existence, as if they were never there. For ancient empires, nature wasn't a backdrop to battle. It was the battlefield itself, unpredictable, merciless, and ultimately undefeated. These are the campaigns where nature decided the fate of nations and proved that no empire, no matter how mighty, could ever truly conquer the earth itself. Our first story begins in the year 9 CE. 3 Roman legions, nearly 20,000 of the empire's finest men, marched confidently into the dense, dark forests of Germania. They were the apex predators of the ancient world, armored, disciplined, seemingly unstoppable. Their general, Varus, believed this would be a swift, decisive victory. But then, the skies opened. What began as a drizzle turned into a torrential, week-long downpour. Roads dissolved into rivers of mud. Roman shields made of wood and leather became waterlogged and impossibly heavy. Their powerful composite bows grew slack, the strings snapping in the damp air, rendering them useless. Their famous disciplined formations, the very heart of Roman military supremacy, fell apart in the sucking mud and thick, disorienting mist. It was in this chaos that the Germanic tribes, led by Arminius, struck. They didn't meet the Romans on an open field. They used the storm as their ally, appearing from the trees like ghosts, striking and vanishing back into the tempest. For the Romans, it was a nightmare. They couldn't see, they couldn't form a line, they couldn't fight the enemy they knew. They were fighting the forest, the rain, and the mud. By the time the skies finally cleared, the legions of Varus were gone, swallowed by the wilderness. Rome's ambition to conquer all of Germania met Arminius and his warriors, aided by nature's fury, and broke. The Emperor Augustus would reportedly wander the halls of his palace for months, crying out, "Varus, give me back my legions." The empire would never again attempt a serious conquest of Germania. Today, that very forest still stands, a silent green monument to the storm that ended Rome's northern dreams. 50 years earlier, another Roman titan met his end, not in a cold forest, but under a blistering, unforgiving sun. The wealthiest man in Rome, Marcus Licinius Crassus, sought the one thing his money couldn't buy: eternal military glory. He decided to invade the vast Parthian Empire, modern-day Iran and Iraq. He brought with him 7 legions, around 35,000 men, marching them directly into the featureless, shimmering expanse of the Mesopotamian desert. They were confident, heavily armored, and utterly unprepared. Nature had already chosen its side. The scorching heat reflected off the pale sand, creating maddening mirages. The Romans, encased in metal and wool, began to collapse from heat stroke. Their throats turned to dust, and water became more precious than gold. The Parthians' brilliant horse archers used the environment perfectly. They would appear as if from the heat haze itself, shower the bogged-down Romans with arrows, and vanish back into the shimmering mirages before a counterattack could even be organized. When Crassus finally tried to retreat, the desert itself refused to let them go. Dehydrated, blinded by the glare, delirious from the heat, tens of thousands of Roman soldiers fell not to a Parthian sword, but to the sun. As one ancient historian wrote, "Empires burn out fastest where the sun burns brightest." Crassus himself was captured and executed. Today, That same land that once promised eternal glory now remembers only the silence of the wind sweeping over the sand. Of course, not every leader was defeated by nature. Some, through sheer force of will, managed to survive it, but not without paying a terrible price. In 218 BC, in one of history's most audacious military gambles, Hannibal Barca of Carthage marched an army from Spain towards the heart of Italy. His path? Directly through the towering snow-capped Alps. He faced not just hostile tribes, but avalanches, frostbite, and the slow, creeping death of the mountains. For every Roman soldier he would later defeat on the battlefields of Italy, a Carthaginian had already been claimed by the snows of the Alps. Imagine leading 37 war elephants over cliffs slick with ice, as your men, accustomed to the warm climate of Africa and Spain, froze in their sleep. It was a feat so impossible, so utterly insane, that even modern mountaineers marvel at how he accomplished it with the resources of the ancient world. Hannibal made it to Italy, a ghost emerging from the frozen peaks to haunt Rome for over a decade. But he arrived with the ghosts of half his army behind him. Nature had taken her toll. The mountains had demanded a tribute of thousands of lives. Even a legendary victory tastes hollow when you know that half your army lies buried forever beneath the snow. Fast forward over 1,000 years to the largest contiguous land empire the world has ever known. In 1274, and again in 1281, Kublai Khan, grandson of Genghis Khan and ruler of the vast Mongol Empire, sent two of the largest naval fleets in history to invade Japan. Hundreds of ships, carrying tens of thousands of Mongol, Chinese, and Korean warriors, set sail. From the shores of Japan, it must have looked like a forest of masts covering the horizon. The ocean itself seemed to have been conquered by the might of the Khan. But then came the storms. On both occasions, as the Mongol fleets anchored, preparing for their final invasion, the weather turned. These weren't just storms, they were typhoons. Winds unlike anything the Mongol sailors from the mainland had ever experienced. They were described as walls of rain and wind, with waves higher than temples. The massive fleet was a toy in the grip of the sea. Ships were smashed against each other, splintered on the rocks, and simply vanished beneath the churning waves. The Japanese, who had been preparing for a desperate last-stand defense, watched in awe as the ocean destroyed their enemy for them. They called it the kamikaze, the divine wind. Nature, it seemed, had chosen to be the ultimate defender of Japan. In the end, armies on Earth rarely could defeat the Mongols in a land battle, but the mighty sea could. But our final story goes back even further, to an empire that vanished in a single day. Long before Rome, Greece, or even the Mongols, the Minoan civilization flourished on the island of Crete. They were masters of trade and art, a sophisticated maritime power that ruled the Aegean Sea. Their cities were unfortified, a sign of their supreme confidence and control of the seas. But their home was built on a geological fault line. Around 1600 BCE, the nearby island of Thera, what we now call Santorini, erupted. This was no ordinary volcano. It exploded with the force of hundreds of atomic bombs, one of the largest volcanic events in human history. A colossal tsunami, hundreds of feet high, radiated outwards, slamming into the northern coast of Crete and wiping entire cities from the map. The sky turned black as ash rained down for days, choking crops and poisoning the land. The Minoan Empire never recovered. In what was likely a single terrifying day, nature redrew the map of the ancient world. Some historians believe this cataclysmic event was the origin of the myth of Atlantis, a magnificent civilization swallowed by the sea. Others see it as a timeless warning that no empire, however advanced, stands higher than the mountains beneath its feet. Blizzards, deserts, storms, fire, Empires rise with the clang of steel and the ambition of kings, but nature never kneels. Even today, our gleaming modern cities stand where ancient armies once fell. We build on floodplains, along earthquake fault lines, and in the shadow of active volcanoes, and we still believe we can master the planet. But history whispers a different, more humbling story. The mightiest conquerors weren't the generals who raised empires. They were the mountains, the storms, and the seas that ended them. Thank you for watching. If you found this journey through history as humbling as we did, consider liking this video and subscribing for more stories about our incredible and often terrifying world. Until next time, stay curious.